You saw
Yo.
Loki.
Yeah, dude. I watched it today.
You're all
Sick.
caught up.
All caught up.
Bro, I love this show.
You've said that every single time we've talked about it.
Like
But
it's just so good, man. It's like, like it doesn't take itself too seriously at all, and it's just different, man. And I've said this before, like they do a great job of giving us different stuff every time, right? Like I felt like WandaVision was like a fun romp through the like decades of sitcoms, but then towards the middle it turned into something that did take itself very seriously and addressed mental health issues and stuff like that, and I thought it did a very good job of that, and it sucked you in with the comedy and then became serious and heavy and then did its thing. And then you had Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which was like a typical Marvel like action movie, only spread out over 6 episodes. And then here we have Loki, which is literally like it's been a comedy from beginning to end, right? But it's also been something that wasn't. I mean, you can take it seriously if you want to. You can look at it, you can dissect it, you can dive into it, you can look at all the little pieces and put everything together and like try to solve mysteries. And I have solved something, I think.
all right, let's hear it, dude.
Well, first, before I get into it, I do want to find out what you thought of the episodes. We haven't talked about Loki in a couple weeks, at least. I think maybe we talked about episode 1 and 2, so we have like 3, 4, and 5 to really catch up on with our audience. And I mean, obviously, we're not going to, dissect every episode. We'll cut apart 5, but I mean, just leading up to this, I mean, how have you been liking it, man? What's your favorite stuff so far?
It's weird, man, because I'm used to Loki just kind of being like this villain, like this guy that like you kind of get pissed off at because he's screwing up shit, and I've fallen into that mood with him, or that mindset where I'm just so used to hating him that this is the complete reversal where you're getting to see things from Loki's perspective. And I feel like in the first episode or first 2 episodes it was like the same old Loki, but I feel like because he's been held captive at the TVA and he hasn't had the use of his powers, it's kind of changed who he is as a person. And I like that we're actually getting to see him grow, knowing that there are other variants of Loki out there that think like him, that are exactly different versions of him. I feel like opening up these like different timelines and giving him eyesight to all that stuff has really changed who he is as a person. I really am interested in the whole like love story that him and Sylvie have. I really like where that's going, because that's very different for him. We haven't ever seen that before. So
we have.
I think. Well, yeah, but this seems kind of different to me though. Like I just
like you understand, and I know you do. Now I'm not telling you anything new, but this is what's fascinating about it to me. Is that
he loves himself.
Yes, he is in love with himself. This is not new territory for him. It's new territory for him because there is a female version of himself involved, and so there is a physical manifestation of the love that he has always had for himself. But he admires himself. He admires the way that his mind works. He admires everything about himself. And here is a person in physical form that can actually provide companionship and talk back to him, because he talks to himself most likely. Right? He's a complete narcissist. Right. And that is what, to me, that's what's super interesting about that relationship between him and Sylvie. And the same can be said about Sylvie, is that she is a complete narcissist and loves herself, right?
But I think also Sylvie's on a different journey though than Loki. Like Loki's been, I think for the most part, has been in a position of power, where Sylvie has been running her entire life since she was like 9. So like there's that longing for companionship that I think Sylvie is looking for, and Loki has always been looking for somebody to kind of like match him. So I feel like they both are becoming invested in each other for different reasons, even though technically they're variants of each other. Right. So it's a weird kind of play on the characters. So, but I'm interested to see where it's going. I think that they did a really good job this episode of showing how, like, where all these other Lokis kind of stand. You had like the older, classic version of Loki played by Richard E. Grant, who I thought just like he killed it, man. He was in this episode. He didn't do a ton, but what he did do, I really enjoyed. And I think that it was really cool to kind of hear his story, about how is he that old and survived this long? Well, because he like, I don't want to ruin it for people, but it's like he was, basically on an island or, for years, but he got lonely. And as soon as he like got tired of being lonely and left, that's when the TVA picked him up, So I don't know. It was really cool, but you get to see how they all work together, I was surprised that Richard E. Grant kind of did what he did at the end, but I mean, it's kind of like, would you, they're all narcissists, but would you do that for other versions of yourself? You know what I mean? It was almost like he sacrificed that version of himself for the other variants of Loki. It was just a really cool moment.
Well, I felt like that happened, and it was funny because it was him, and not the kid, not the alligator.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
like it was him.
It was like he already lived his life. You know what I mean?
He was old, and he was ready. He was ready. He was like, you know what? I'm gonna do this thing, and I'm gonna do something good finally, right? Like and help, and whether it's help myself, whether if that's how he's thinking, like like I'm gonna help myself do this thing. Or just helping somebody or helping humanity or whatever, just doing a good thing to close out and find his glorious purpose. Because every one of them is always like they're spouting off about glorious purpose, right? Like that's their thing. That's what they're looking for. The only one that I don't think has ever mentioned that is Sylvie.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Unless she was referencing his glorious purpose, right? Like I think she said it, but I think she was talking about him, and she doesn't care about that. Her one sole purpose in life is she already knows what it is. She's not trying to find it. It's vengeance. It's taking down the TVA.
Yeah. And I can tell you that. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say the one character that is doing a really good job is Ravonna, and the only reason why I say that is because I can't stand her. Like I hate her. So, and I'm like watching it today and I'm like, oh my God, can somebody just strangle this girl? And that's why I know she's doing a good job. Yeah. Because if she wasn't, I wouldn't feel that way. So she's knocking it out of the park. So she's killing it.
So this leads me to my theory, and this is something that I'm proud of, and if I were a writer on this show, this is what everybody would be getting right now, and people would hate me for it at the end, but they would also recognize that it was great. Right?
Don't build yourself up or anything, man.
Just pat myself on the back. So my original theory, for those of you that have been with us from the beginning, my original theory was that Kang was going to show up in the final episode and maybe in a cameo appearance at the end, revealing that he was the mastermind behind everything, that the TVA was not in fact run by the Timekeepers, and that the Timekeepers were fake. So far, I'm 2 for 3, right? Am I wrong?
No, you're right. Yeah.
Right. So Timekeepers were fake. We found that out. The TVA is being run by somebody else, and that somebody else is most likely Kang. Or is it? Now, Kang is involved somehow. We all know this. He has to be. He is a villain that is going to be heavily featured in Phase 4. This has been talked about. He's going to be introduced in Ant-Man and the Wasp 2, or I don't know if that's called Ant-Man and the Wasp 3. It's definitely the third iteration of the Ant-Man franchise. Whatever. I don't know yet. Whatever. We'll figure that out. It's probably out there. There's probably a title card or something that's been revealed, but fuck it. Anyway, you know what I mean. So he's supposedly starting there. They've announced the actor. This is stuff that I talked about in episode 1, which led me to believe that he's probably going to show up here because they announced the actor so early. They usually hold on to that information. They don't usually let that out the bag so early. That being the case, I'm starting to feel like this next episode, we're going to find out that the person behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz, so to speak, may actually be none other than, if I can get a drum roll. Thank you. Loki himself.
Oh shit! You mean like the actual,
like Loki, like
the
the one that we are following right now in all 5 episodes, and in the MCU that we've been watching since Iron Man. That Loki, our Loki.
So you think the guy that we're following right now though is a different variant? Is like a different, or he's gonna like walk in and it's just gonna be him?
It's just gonna be him, and him being captured by the TVA and brought through this journey and meeting Sylvie and all of that stuff is all part of the sacred timeline that puts him in power.
That's a pretty solid theory.
And
well, it's funny because she kind of touched upon that. She goes, "There's going to be like, would you ever betray me?" Mm-hmm. And he has that really serious like conversation with her, and he says,
"I won't let you down."
Yeah, I won't let you down, and I'm like, will he like turn on her though? And then he says, "Well, because there would be a point where you'll be in like a position of power.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you'll be able to rule." And then he was like, "And I would be happy." You know, and I'm like.
And there's 2 ways that it could play out. One is that he betrays her. And
right.
that's how he takes everything over, and that's how he becomes the lord of everything and runs all this shit. 2 is he tries to convince her to, join him or whatever. And from what we've seen so far, I doubt that she wants to. I mean, she's all about vengeance. She misses her family. She's been plucked from her reality. And it's Loki's job, if he wants to stay in power, to make sure that shit happens. So he can't not do that. He can't not have her plucked from her reality. He has to get her. Because without her, none of the shit that's supposed to happen is going to happen. Because I
can see, I can see it going down that way. It makes a lot of sense, just because the whole thing is about Loki. So why wouldn't the person behind it be Loki? But then where does Kang factor in?
Well, with all of the Lokis that were introduced, right? The fact that they're leaning so heavily on the variants and how the variants are the ones that they have to purge from the timeline. Like they hunt the variants, like it looks like that's always been a thing. And it was never a problem until one of the variants started fighting back, which is Sylvie, right? But their job was to hunt the variants down and prune them, right? And prune the Lokis. Like that was Mobius's main objective. Like it wasn't just one Loki that they were hunting. They were hunting all the Lokis. They wanted all of them gone. So what's one of Loki's biggest things? He wants to be the Loki. He wants to be the best Loki, the only Loki. Right? Loki is the only thing or person or being that can, unseat Loki from power in Loki's mind, right? Who else can challenge him? It's only another Loki. So you got to get rid of them. You got to put them on, this island where they can never get out and sick a watchdog on them, right? And then the other piece is exactly what you said, is that conversation is what kind of cued my thinking, where he says, I won't let you down. You know what I mean? Like I would never betray you or whatever, right? Dude, usually, just from a storytelling standpoint, when somebody says that, it's a setup for the time that they are going to betray that person. Otherwise there's no. The only other point for having that in there would be to make a point of how people wouldn't trust him, right? But maybe they should have, because at the end he was trustworthy. But in this case, it looks like they're painting that picture where you want to trust him. So I think the concept is to plant that seed, make you think that he's turned a corner, and then flip it on its ear, and he ends up betraying her and becoming this villainous mastermind. Now the Kang piece, I thought about that because, obviously we all know Kang's coming. Is it here? Well, number one, this is a good way to not introduce him in this one, or maybe they do give you that cameo piece at the end. But I'm thinking Kang is a direct product of Loki ruling the timeline. I think Kang may be somebody who rises up kind of in the same way that Sylvie did, but more in a way where he's, he wants what Loki has. Mm-hmm. Or he feels like, it's a vengeance thing for him as well, but he's also looking to conquer and take over everything. So Loki becomes the creator of Kang, in a sense.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Is the next episode the last episode?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll find out next week.
Yeah. So the other piece of that last thing is that Kang would not start, and I think this is what would be really interesting for Kang, is that he wouldn't start as this like all powerful like Lord of all time in creation, right? Where we got Thanos in Avengers in that little cameo. It was Thanos trying to get his hands on an Infinity Stone, and he's hunting down the Infinity Stones because the Infinity Stones are what he needs to become all powerful and snap his fingers, kill half the galaxy, or make them disappear or whatever, and restore balance in his eyes. So he wasn't a complete bad guy, so to speak, but he was, it's like his concept of how to fix things was completely fucking insane. But he had his reasons, and his reasons were somewhat like, there are some people that might even agree with him. You know what I mean? And so it puts him in this gray area that Marvel likes to paint their villains. And I think this would put Kang in that gray area where he starts off, seemingly like I need to fix things, right? Like Loki is the ruler of all time, and I need to unseat him, right? And like that could be how he comes across as like one of these like villains that's in that gray area, and he has to grow and he has to become that all-powerful Kang that is able to unseat Loki and then take over everything, and then it's up to the heroes to defeat him, right? So it gives him a little bit more of an arc than just coming in, dropping fucking bombs, and being this all-powerful thing like right out the gate. He starts off as a less powerful version of Kang and grows into that power and unseats the Lord of Time and becomes the Lord of Time, and then that's when it hits the fan like it did in Endgame kind of thing, where we build up that crescendo to like this like huge like superhero brawl. And that, my friend, is how my brain works and how I fucking like extrapolate things into a story that turns into what I think should happen that probably will not happen.
Imagine if it does happen, dude. I'd be like, all right.
But we can always go back to this episode and say, hey,
I was just gonna say we could always refer to it and just press play.
Right.
So anyway.
But that's how it would play out for me.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I know, dude. I agree with you. There are some parts of it I have. I mean, I don't know. The whole thing about like him. I guess the only thing that doesn't make sense to me in my mind is but Loki was captured by the TVA. He went through all this only for it to be him in the end. You know what I mean? Like, is he just playing everybody?
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No, because he doesn't know it's him until he gets there. Because everything that he's doing now leads to him becoming the ruler.
Oh, yeah, but then how was that put in place then? Before that? Like, how was that in place already then?
So, that's where the time fuckery comes in. So basically you have... Think of it in tiers, right? We have sections of time. So in section 1, Loki's captured by the TVA and goes through all this stuff that we've seen in the first 5 episodes. Section number 2 is going to be this... I don't know that they're going to run into a version of Loki himself there, but they're going to run into something, and it's going to be somebody maybe that has been put in power or whatever, and that thing is going to be what they defeat, and he decides that he wants to become the Lord of all time, right? And then,
I see what you're saying. Okay,
the final tier is that Loki, and that Loki's like everything that happened before has to happen for him to get there.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense. Okay, yeah, I can see it. All right, yeah, now it makes sense. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't really have anything to add to that. I mean, I think you pretty much said it all. So let's just we're just gonna have to see what happens next week. But I think it's a solid theory. I really do.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Anybody that's listening, definitely sound off in the comments. Let me know if I'm absolutely nuts, or if you agree with me, or if even there's another version of this that you see playing out. I would love to hear different theories and try maybe even get a Frankenstein theory going to where we pull pieces of them and put them together. And I love doing stuff like that. So yeah, definitely sound off in the comments and hit that subscribe button. Thank you.
Word. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to Tony and Cooley. We appreciate you listening every week while we ramble about stuff. If you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure that you do that now. Hit that subscribe button so you can see all the content we release every single week.
Yeah, and for those of you that are on Facebook, come check us out at the Nerd Ruckus Network. That is a Facebook group. So if you're, wondering, what you got to do is you got to look for Facebook groups and then search for Nerd Ruckus Network. Seek us out, request membership, and we shall approve you if we deem necessary.
Yeah. Oh, and if you guys don't have time to watch our videos on YouTube because you're busy, obviously you can still listen to us on any of your podcast listening platforms. Just look up Tony and Cooley and you will find us there. And that's it. There you go.